the baptism of Francis Benedictine born. Isn't there something about that name? It just sounds like it is destined. Destined for great things. The first Sunday after the Epiphany. What an honor to be here with Nathan and Nicole. Actually, maybe I'll try to take this off. What do you think?
Yeah.
Okay. Nathan and Nicole and the St. George's community to participate in this moment of Francis' new life into the waters of baptism, rising to fullness of life with God. My husband Michael and I have traveled from Jaffrey, New Hampshire this morning, but Nathan and I met in the daily life of community life at Berkeley Divinity School, where it may not surprise you that he would get up early in the morning to run barefoot through the eastern part of New Haven before coming back to make coffee for our whole community and getting to chapel, sometimes also barefoot. And then he was my favorite student to dip into the kitchen. He was one of the house residents in one of the houses there that we all worshiped in. And I would dip into the kitchen after chapel to see what was going on top of this huge bowl of oatmeal, or what stage his bread baking might possibly be in, and this pretty disgusting fermenting a vegetable thing that he did. I don't know, they may not know that about you. They may not know that about you. And I will say all that right along with the distinguished scholarship of his theological work. And then I started to notice a skip in his step and a light in his eyes. And it wasn't long before Nathan introduced me to Nicole. So it is such a joy to have been at your wedding celebration, to have been at your ordination, and now the fruit of your love to be here for this baptism today. Baptism is a community sacrament, right? This is not a private sacrament. It's a community sacrament. So as we receive Nathan as we receive Francis from the arms of Nathan and Nicole, as they hand him over to the worldwide community of faith, the larger spiritual household across the globe that we represent this morning. We receive Francis, but we also renew our baptismal covenant. We come here this morning not only for Francis, but to open our hearts to a spiritual awakening in our own lives. So as we come in to the sacred presence of God, I invite you to locate that still small place in yourself where you open your heart to God. I find that it can really help to make room in that space that God resides within us when we come into God's presence and lay down a lot of the heaviness that we most likely brought in here this morning. How could we not? The constant unknowns of COVID, the lives lost in the pandemic, our fears for the future of the natural world, our climate and environment, and so much else on each one of your hearts and lives and shoulders that I don't know, but God knows. All that bears down on us, and when we're invited here, we're invited to lay it aside, to set it at the feet of the mercy of God, and to let it rest there. It will be our problem to solve, right? These are our problems to solve, and these are our sufferings to bear, but for now, make room for the presence of God. Do not fear, says the prophet Isaiah. I have called you by name, and you are mine. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And through the rivers, they shall not overwhelm you. When you walk through fire, you shall not be burned, and the flame shall not consume you. I'm the Lord your God, and I would give Ethiopia, I would give Seba and Egypt. Those are countries of great landmass. And God would give them all in return for us. Isaiah says, because you are precious in my sight and honored, and I love you. So what is the message of the prophet Isaiah this morning? We are valued. We belong. We are seen. Notice, it's not that the raging rivers aren't going to be there, and it's not that the flames aren't going to be there. They just are going to be there, and we will be allowed to walk through them. Isaiah is not saying life is golden on easy street now that we found God. He's saying the floods won't drown us. The flames won't consume us. Isaiah is laying the bedrock beneath our path, and baptism is the bedrock that we build our lives upon. Baptism is the conviction of our faith. Right? Baptism is not based on our feelings, which so much of our spiritual life is. I feel close to God and I'm praying. I feel God's not listening. Where has God gone? So much of our life of faith is based on how we feel. Baptism is not based on how we feel. Baptism is a lifelong, irreversible conviction. Faith is the assurance, the conviction of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Baptism is this outward sign, a tangible moment in time when we are handed over and named and loved in a way that is of another order than what Nathan and Nicole can give to Francis. It's of another order. We are embraced by the long stream of salvation history, what Martin Luther King Jr. calls the moral arc of history that bends toward justice. That is the river that Francis dives down into. Those are the waters. Faith is the conviction that comes from the waters of baptism. Conviction that even if we can't see it or imagine it, that God is sending hope into that devastating destruction of Mayfield, Arkansas, Denver storms, California fires, and threats to democracy. Baptism wakes us up to the world around us. In Luke's gospel that was just read to us, John baptizes Jesus, and just before he does, he offers these words of warning about who he's about to baptize. And John tells us that Jesus is demanding. An axe he will lay to the tree that does not bear fruit. So the people hear this, and they're scared and say, what does that mean? What are we supposed to do? And John, the spiritual guru on that microbiotic diet who's out in the wilderness, he doesn't offer us some lofty pietistic advice about meditation, though there's nothing wrong with meditation. What does he say? If you have 2 coats, give one away. If you have enough food, share it. And don't embezzle, rob, or lie to benefit yourself. Wake up to the world around you. Francis, I cannot help in this sermon but to mention the most woke Anglican I have ever met, Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Francis, you are entering the communion of saints with this giant of faith in action, who has gone before you the proudest legacy in our lifetimes. Tutu spoke at a climate conference in Copenhagen, words I'd like to imagine him saying to Francis. He said, "I want to say a big thank you to all of you, and especially you beautiful young ones. We oldies have made something of a mess of the world, and I want to say to the leaders who are meeting here, look in the eyes of your grandchildren. Climate change is already a serious crisis today, but we can do something about it. If we don't, you won't have a world. You will be drowning. You will be burning. There will be no food. There will be floods. We have only one world, and if we mess it up, there's no other world. And for those of you who think that the rich are going to escape, you won't. We either swim or sink together. And we want to leave a beautiful world for the beautiful, wonderful, young generation." Francis, our world has never needed you more. In baptism, we wake up. Francis will wake up. Wake up, TJ. Wake up, Nathan. Wake up, Joni, Dan, Ron, Alice, Maggie, and Sophie. Wake up, Michael. Wake up in God's household, where these amazing two things happen at the same time, where our name is Be Loved. Love we cannot reduce or improve. Love we cannot diminish, no matter how we mess up. And in this household, our particular, unrepeatable selves are valued and used. Our intelligence, our compassion, our creativity, our passion for the natural world, our nursing skills, teaching skills, number skills, IT skills, our food, our money, offered for the purposes of God's love to flourish in the world. Baptism is the comfort and the love, and with it, the fiery expectation of Jesus that we wake up to the world around us.